Thaiga Square. Gitaru at the interchange is closed, not a roadblock, closed completely. And we're also seeing roadblocks then at Valley Road, just mentioned as well. So we're seeing some traffic at Valley Road. And this is folks who are then turned back, who are trying to get into the city via Valley Road. We're seeing the same thing at the Kasarani exit. Nyayo Stadium, also, that roundabout. You're not going to be able to find your way into town to even get onto Uhuru Highway, so that's closed. Landis Road closed as well. Kenyatta Avenue and Uhuru Highway. So we're looking at Uhuru Highway, the length and breadth of it, coming in from Westlands or coming in off of Mombasa Road. So that's what we have so far. So if you're in any one of these areas trying to get onto Mombasa Road or trying to get into the city to get off, it's not going to be possible, at least for now. So we see that there's total road closure in some parts, but then we're also seeing that there are roadblocks in other parts. Roadblocks being that vehicles, you will disembark your vehicle and you will walk, or you will turn back. Those are the choices that we have been given this morning.
Well, the train yesterday, so Kenya Railways released a statement 8 p.m. Sunday. This is 2 hours before departure. And in their public notice, they were talking about temporary suspension of Madaraka Express passenger service train. So we regret to notify members of the public that due to technical issues, the Madaraka Express 10 p.m. passenger train from Mombasa to Nairobi has been suspended. Kenya Railways prioritizes the safety of our passengers. We apologize for any inconvenience caused. We saw from the managing editor after this notice what happened at the Mombasa terminus. A lot of people who had actually driven there with luggage, with children, ready to come to Nairobi and other parts of the country were told you can't because there are technical issues with the train. However, there is a post that I've just seen. At that same time, a video shows that same train leaving Mombasa terminus at around that same time. So the 8 p.m. Madaraka Express arrived in Mombasa. Apparently, it had technical issues that had been suspended for 10 p.m. trip. Then later on, the train just left with no one on board.
So the same train that had technical difficulties and was not going to travel because of these technical difficulties then actually left with the same technical difficulties. But I guess the technical difficulties that it had were the passengers.
Yes.
And now having no passengers, then it was able to leave and go to Nairobi.
Yeah.
No?
Well, according to the video I'm watching right now that has been posted on the socials, that 10 p.m. train departed Mombasa terminus with no one on board. So it's not... Let's not say it's not clear.
Were they doing a trial run or whether the railway was still functioning? But let's just be open with it, yeah? There was no technical difficulty because at any given point that statement ought to have been released way earlier. Because remember when Kenyans were trying to actually access the train station, some were blocked at Dongokundu bypass towards the train station. So if you just look at all these and what is happening, there is clearly a plan to just stop Kenyans. Because remember, there was Summertide's event that was in Diani, and majority of the young people who had traveled down were coming back to Nairobi. And that's perhaps could be the reason why they were blocked, not to come back to the city.
You know, the timing is suspicious, obviously.
Exactly,
Whether it's legitimate or not, the timing is what is suspicious because this is 2 hours before departure time. That's when everybody's getting... that's when this post was actually sent. Already people had arrived at Mombasa terminus. And then we're waking up this morning, all the major roads coming into the city, they're also clearly blocked. So you read that script and it tells you, and it's pointing to one thing, that it's trying to make sure that you stop any movement from outside Nairobi coming into Nairobi. Maybe only flights are the ones that are
But then again, how do you also explain that the train that had technical difficulties left Mombasa
with no one on board?
No one on board.
I'm telling you the technical difficulties were
Or
the
the
people.
passengers.
Yeah, so that's what we're looking at.
When the rain starts beating, it beats hard.
Proper. Well, one man has made his way this morning despite those technical difficulties, and he joins us in a conversation this morning. And so all of this understood as we get into our conversation. Njeru Gavangu, good morning to you.
Good morning, ma'am.
How are you doing?
Sir. Very well.
Karibu sana.
Saba ni sawa.
Ni sawa?
You made it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
How?
All over the place. Go roundabouting everybody.
You roundabouted everybody and everything.
Yes, and I'm here.
Did you have to use the expressway then to get on?
No.
Okay.
No.
But it's like you're
first of
leaving
all,
the
they have closed all these roads around Nyayo Stadium, around Timor, so it's difficult. But nevertheless, some of them understand that everything cannot be stand still. Yeah.
Right. Wananjero Gavangu is a former Runyenjes Member of Parliament and joins us here this morning. Very glad that you could make it into the Situation Room this morning. We're going to look at the power of protests. It seems to have a lot of power because we're seeing that everything essentially is being shut down so that these protests don't take place. But we also see a time where protests were the order of the day, and that if anything, it moved people in a particular direction. That if the needle of governance or the needle of government were to move, that it was the protests in some case that did something. And it's not just Kenya, anywhere around the world. So that is what propels us into our conversation for this morning. We're glad that you're here. Duncan Okach was supposed to join us as well. He may be stuck somewhere, so we'll see how this goes. But the discourse must continue.
Right.
We're going to welcome you to the show with a proverb. Dennis will tell you which country he's in, and would like to hear interpretation of the proverb that he gives.
Yes. So today we're in a country that is 62 years old. Got its independence in 1963. It is a country that boasts of a proper economy that majorly depends on agriculture, but as well is doing everything because it is also considered to be an economic hub when it comes to matters technology, a silicon savannah, especially in the East Africa region. This country, its capital is Nairobi. Yeah. And the proverb today is simple. Siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. How would you interpret that?
Oh, siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. You see, some of the people that say that were also close to us, you know, and we were saying about them that wana siasa mbaya. Na yeye mwenyewe ama hawa wenyewe walikuwa natuambia pia uenda tukawa na siasa mbaya. What it means it is it's like a sword that Jesus Christ was talking about. That he came with a sword that is double-edged. You know, siasa mbaya to the government is that which intends to remove them. Siasa mbaya to the people is what oppresses them. Siasa mbaya maisha mbaya is a correct statement that for the people to be able to thrive economically in peace and united, you know, they must have a leadership that understands their aspirations and therefore get out there articulate policies that would be able to achieve that.
You know, a different way of looking at siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. Both sides have their own politics.
Yes.
Depends which side you're in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because we're coming to a time where, if we really look at it, over the last, we're now in 2025, the beginning of the new administration was marked by protests. It was marked by Maandamano. We are hearing already, we heard at a very early time, the Sufuria movement. That's what it was called.
Sufuria.
Yeah. The opposition at the time, and I say at the time deliberately because that same opposition now is part of the broad-based government, but the opposition at the time was crying about, you know, the high cost of living and the need for certain governance to take into place. So protests happened then. We then went into a time where protests happened in 2024, and there was the anti-finance bill, which essentially was a bill that was seen by many, a draconian one, to take what was left out of the pockets of Kenyans. And that resulted in a time whereby it seemed as though the language that was going to be heard by government was that of protest. Saba, many say, was watered down over the years. But now we come into a time where another protests, and we see the country essentially shut down because of this. And so we're asking the very simple question at the beginning of this conversation. Do protests have power? And if so, what power do they wield?
Now, of course, every protest is a projection of what people feel, what grievances they want to express. And you know, one of the things that I have observed in this country is that the government, all governments from Jomo to where we are today, appear like everything they do is to hurt the citizen, you know? Everything that they do. And the reason is that all of them were not actually qualified to be our leaders. You know, some of them were quite fake. Others were brought in by the Mzungus. while others were built by the same characters to be able to continue and propagate the same things, the ideals that they stood for. And so Kenya is almost permanently grieving about something, and that something, one, revolves around economics, agriculture, education, such. And so does the procession or demonstration have power? Yes. Every time there is a procession, a demonstration, or if you like, some conflict between the people and the government kind of tones down because they fear ejection from office, and that is the only thing they fear, ejection from office. So that what you are saying this morning about closing this nation, that nothing happens, is simply because of fear. That the government fears that it could be ejected, and it can happen anytime. Why? You have hurt the people. You have touched their emotions negatively. And so, humanly, they will have to react someday unless you tone down. And they are not sure which day and which minute that will come. Because they have hurt the people and they know what they are doing against the people is quite wrong.
How has the character of these protests changed over time? Because you were involved in many. You were involved in what many call the second liberation, and fought vehemently to say, you know what, there is a space, a democratic space, which the country has not yet entered, and fought for that, quite some. Do we see that the character of that fight has changed?
It has changed because I think some of our leaders are very crude people, almost primitive. I'm sorry to use such words. Primitive because, look, when people have announced they are going to have a procession, peaceful, and you introduce goons and violent askaris, what it simply means, it's going to annoy the demonstrators. One, during our time, we announced demonstration. Police would be there, but they will not bring the goons. The goons were introduced in this country by what they called something, 1997, 98, where my brother Ngumo would collect some fellows in the city, introduce them in the streets while we were demonstrating, and they started beating people. That is how they worked on Timothy Njoya, And when you beat the people as police or goons on the streets, everybody gets worked up and they start throwing stones. They can get anything. They burn cars, But if the government wants these things not to happen, they must approach these things civilly, Otherwise, then what they are introducing in this country is anarchy. Things they cannot be able to control, things they will not be able to handle, and they know it. Because we are not the first one. Last year, what happened was something very unique, that we have got about 17 countries whose parliaments have been abused by the public. And the reason is that members of parliament start playing the oppressor, supporting the despots. And therefore, in the end, the people decide that the members of parliament are actually the enemies. And so they force their way to parliament.
Jero, as we look at the country today, you compare back in the day when you're in the struggle, today as the young people are in the struggle, look at a government that is doing everything to block demonstrations to happen across the country. There's a bill in parliament right now that wants to control how demonstrations will work. And if you look at what is happening today in the morning, seems as though we have a government that is afraid of its people, which asks the question, is it true that the police are unable to handle protest in the country, or is it engineered to look as if police cannot handle?
Our police force is a very frustrated force, extremely frustrated. I remember when I was in parliament, I brought a small little question to the minister then, Masden Mandoka, about the policemen. And I had collected about 1,000 payslips from the police force. 1,000 pay slips. Most of them were earning less than 26,000 shillings. Less than 26,000. And particularly the CIDs were expected to wear civilian clothes, presentable suits as they go around their work, right? And when I questioned them, I found that they were having take home of about 2,200 shillings maximum. And one of them said, and I told the police that, I told the parliament that, and Mazin Madoka, that Bwana Kathango, there is nothing else I can do. I have to pick my arm now and look for some little money for my children. And so, meaning I will be involved in some robbery or some theft somewhere, right? And so, when you are looking at the policeman, it's a character that is frustrated, deep frustrated. Those days they would be sharing quarters, that about 2 or 3 families will be sharing the same tent, those iron makeshifts. And you know, when the man comes out to the public and he is challenged, he remembers the treatment the same society or government is giving him, and he reacts badly. And therefore, one of the things that is happening in this country is this. There is either a go slow with the police, or if not, they actually think they are part of the people, because they are. And the government should be careful that in the end, they are actually silently mobilizing the forces to be with the people. And they have to check this. I'm a former military man also, you know, and I know that there comes a point where the military man, the askari, sees the nonsense bestowed on the people, and they decide that it's going no more.
But Njeru, that conversation, we've had that conversation through all the cycles of reforms when we talk about the police, and
Yes.
it almost comes across as an excuse for what they do, that look, they're being paid poorly, and so therefore that excuses corruption. But then what we are looking at on the streets currently is viciousness. Because many Kenyans are frustrated. There are many Kenyans who can't even make 100 shillings a day. They're equally frustrated. So it can't just exclude the police. But how then do you describe the kind of viciousness that we are seeing? Because during your time, we had deaths as well. We had people being beaten by batons.
Yes.
Today, it's a police officer in clear view of a camera lens shooting at point blank
Yes.
at somebody. Does that excuse, whether they're frustrated, whatever it is, does that still excuse the level of viciousness? Because it doesn't change.
That one does not. You know, in these forces, you'll find that we have got special squads which are formed to address some specific areas. And those squads are formed by friends of the leaders. So that if you're looking at the Kenya police, you have got departments which are directly involved somehow to the leaders. Either the minister in charge of the security, or you are talking about the commanders of various bases, etc., or even the president himself. That they decide that we are going to form squads, and those squads are to silence the people. Whoever is seen emerging, either as potential or as leader of a certain resistance, pluck him out.
Is that what you're currently seeing happening on the street?
That is what is happening now. You know, that is what's happening now. And although I don't want to challenge any particular person, but I can tell you that as far as I'm concerned, the senior commanders of the Kenya police forces know who is plucking people to murder. In fact, let me tell you, it has gone to a certain extent where they visit people's homes, get or arrest characters from those homes, and then go and kill them. That you have seen. And they continue telling us, the police continue saying, we did not arrest that character. He is not in our cell. No. Nyayo House was not in the cells of the police, but I was there for many years. or many months. We have got a place next to the Kenya Planters Cooperative Union, down there, which they used as torture chambers. It was not a police station. We have got Karura Forest. It was not a police station. Yet, the managers and operators of those areas were recruited from the police forces. And that was by some characters who knew what exactly they wanted. Nyayo House was put up, to torture people, specifically as a torture chamber, to torture people who appeared to be against the system, right? And so when a policeman comes and says, "Sisi hatujui ni nani," no, that's nonsense.
But Njeru, I mean, let's give some historical context to this.
Yeah.
You are arrested, tortured, detained without trial.
Yes.
You've gone through it all. 35 years ago is when we had the original demands of Saba protest on July 7th, 1990.
Yes.
35 years later, have we even made progress?
It's still happening, and a lot of us are as good as our parents and teachers. By the way, So
what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that is what I mean.
No, what do you mean?
Listen, and there is nothing wrong to say this.
Yeah.
While we were doing all these things, the system was organizing about how they were going to confront us, stop us, right? And so they recruited some characters and organized to form a thing they called the YK 92. Yeah. Now, YK 92 was led by our president and a few others, and we know them, and he knows I know. Because, where he operated is where I was operating. They spend a lot of money. In fact, the system printed a note, 500 shillings note, was printed specifically to be used by youth for Kano 92.
Jirongo
and my friend Ruto, and they are there. They are about 7 of them that are here now, right? Now, what is it that those people learned from the system? Exactly that let's go out there, let us dish out this money, recruit our people, confuse them so that Kina Kathango, Anyona and what have you do not get leeway to mobilize others.
But you look at that movement back then. Let's compare to what we are currently seeing in the country. So 1992 multi-party elections. So Youth for Kano 92, like you're saying, YK 92. So this was during the reintroduction of multi-party politics. Now, Youth for Kano 92 ostensibly was to mobilize grassroots support for President Moi.
Kano.
And at the time, the target was purely to secure votes. Now, we are 2 years to an election. We are seeing the same patterns playing out today. How do you read these current patterns?
Maybe I reflected in very different ways myself. The very first thing is that what we see is a Jomo Kenyatta politic, because and people talk about dynasties. We don't have dynasties in Kenya. It's a Jomo Kenyatta dynasty that is running. Because from 1958, when he was brought from Rocky Tang to Mararar, the thing was to coach him, to guide him about how he was going to run this government. And when he came out here, the first thing he did was to adopt the provincial administrators. And the next one was to actually say that the white man's interest in Kenya will be protected. And from there, he started recruiting people who would continue with that program. What I see is handing over from time to time, government to government, about who was going to protect that same position. Now, what we are talking about is this. The emergence of people like Ruto, and I am here saying strongly because I know him, is that he is a Moi boy. And the Moi boy cannot be able to do anything else than now what he was bequeathed. Now look, if you look at the characters of those governments we have had, you will actually see there is nothing else that happens other than protecting the position that Jomo Kenyatta took in 1961. And therefore, don't worry about that 5 or 65 years. From the time that Jomo Kenyatta was released in August 1961 to where we are now is 65 years. Nothing has changed.
Okay, let's take a break and we'll come back and look at, when you say nothing has changed in terms of the real politic of the day and the orders that are being given out from one point to another, if that's the case, then what is the hope for getting to a place where that you then have, at the very least, an accepted relationship between government and the people? We'll come back and we'll look at that when we continue with this conversation. Jeru Gavangu, former member of parliament for Runyenje's constituency, is here this morning, and we're looking at the power of protests, and we'll continue with that when we come back from this break. Every child deserves a healthy start in life, but threats like typhoid and measles, rubella still endanger our communities. So typhoid is a serious illness. It spreads through contaminated food and water. It causes high fever, stomach pain, and fatigue. Measles, on the other hand, is highly contagious and can lead to severe complications, especially in young children. And you have symptoms from fever to persistent cough, red eyes, and body rash. But the good news is these diseases are preventable. So until the 14th of July, the Ministry of Health is rolling out a nationwide vaccination campaign, and children between the ages of 9 months and 14 years will receive the typhoid conjugate vaccine. And then those between 9 months and 5 years will also receive the measles rubella vaccine. And all vaccines are safe and effective and absolutely free. So you'll find health workers at public health facilities, schools, markets, and places of worship across the country. So let's protect the future, one child at a time. Visit your nearest vaccination center today. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health, UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and development partners right here on Spice FM. And even as we continue with those conversations, for you to remember that there's an Aga Khan near you, definitely one that you can find. You don't have to worry about it. Usiende mbali kutafuta specialist, tuko kwa mtaa wako. The Aga Khan University Hospital has brought specialized care near you through 53 outpatient medical centers. Watu wa Islands, we've got you with the following medical centers. There's Buruburu at the Kenya National Library Services Complex, Embakasi opposite Kenya Pipeline Staff Quarters, and Donholm at the Greenspan Mall, Komarok at K Mall, Ruai along Kangunda Road, Eastleigh through General Warayingi Road. Some of the specialists available at the Aga Khan University at your neighborhood include pediatricians, gynecologists, cardiologists, urologists, family physicians, neurologists, nutritionists, psychiatrists, ENT, dentists, dermatologists, everybody. Visit any Aga Khan University Hospital Medical Center in your hood today or call 0730 011 888. The Aga Khan University Hospital, world-class care here and now.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Anyway, ongeza grass. Uhudumu, ongeza grass. Samahani wait, ongeza grass. Uhudumu, ongeza grass. Acha nilewe tu. Nilewe tu.
Dial star 811 star 897 hash to get this as your skiza tune. KTN, ndio home.
I make my Tuesday count by reading the Financial Standard. It helps me make much better and smarter financial decisions.
Setting the standard every day of the week. The Standard, Kenya's bold newspaper.
I do sell the products, yes, but most of my focus is on the training part, making sure that other people learn about crochet and mentoring the younger girls who want to learn how to do crochet. So there's many different areas you can tap in to get money. I'd like to urge you as an entrepreneur to try all of them, because if you do not try all of them, you might not really get to know which works for you.
Hakika msichana si mwenye anakuuzianga. Basi nipatie namba ya ule anakuuzianga, nitumie polisi.
Hapana. Akijua anatafutwa, atatoroka.
Tulia, tunaweza ongea. Nakuuliza umechelewa wapi? Yaani mimi nimeshinda nimekusubiri hapa nimengevya tu. Hujui uko nimeacha kazi yangu.
Babe, your gift box ni ya nani? And is that still in my treasure?
Ni client alileta hapa jana.
You might not know how to be a father, but by the virtue that you are there, your presence, it changes a whole generation.
Provision, which is financial in nature, is not the sole role of a man.
We were taught not to say no. And so as a man, I don't know how to say no.
Yeah. Men who are exhausted and are burnt out are not even able to show up well for their other duties. Even in badminton matters.
Unashindwa kucheza kanungo? Kwa sababu hauko.
DJ Tatua.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Constituency, and we've been asking ourselves questions around whether the civil space is shrinking, and what we see in terms of this movement, in terms of this friction that we've heard. And we're looking at the different character between when protests happened in the 90s and the 2000s and then into the 2020s. Are we seeing that there are threats to freedom of assembly, different from when they were before?
Yes, I think there is also a few things that Kenyans should reflect on. By the time that we were coming up, but between 1986 and 1992, the environment was very sober, that there was no usage of money, But from 1992, there was very heavy spending of money, and the people kind of have gotten involved and used to that money. And I wanted to remind people that we have got 7 items, which have affected the Kenyan social life. Interacting has become commercial, and therefore thinking together without money appears to me to be hindered. The first one is that the British were preparing to hand over reins of power to an African, thought about curriculum, school curriculum, And the school curriculums that have been developed in this country have affected our education, has made education be quite flimsy, in the sense that people have been denied of their history, characters have been denied of formation, and in the end, anything that appears to be sensible, central to life, has been kept aside. That is number one. Number two is that we have brought to the fore characters that are yes men. And the yes man in Africa appears to be very popular because that yes man agrees with the former colonialists, and therefore we are permanently in neo-colonialism, meaning that our leaders advance that which was being done by the colonial master. And number three is that we introduced in this country a subject called family planning. And that subject has brought a lot of heavy arguments and debates. And that particular area has made our people think that to be free, to be financially able, you have to remain single, small family, and most of it immoral. I think we need to relook in that so that we know what the individual and the family is. Number four is that we were introduced in 1990s to the NGO and the evangelical world, both from the United States. Meaning that if you want to go to church, in fact, and you don't have transport, it is paid for. You know, those days you want to go to church and you don't think there is going to be lunch, it is given, it is served. While everybody who goes to a meeting, whether it is educational meeting where the individual is going to benefit or not, he is paid for the transport, he is given what they call the sitting or whatever allowance, and in the end, something little to go and give to the family. Without that money these days, nobody wants to attend any meeting or any sitting. You have to promise that there is that money. If there isn't, then you can keep your meeting. And then the next thing that is preached in our churches is prosperity. Now, you can actually see it that if the NGO is giving money for attendance of meetings, and the church is preaching prosperity, and the government leaders or politicians are actually offering that money, it becomes the way of life. Meaning that therefore, anything that you do in this country without money will not be respected. And you become a poor person if you don't have that money. The question is, where do you get it from? Then lastly, and that is the best thing you can see happening now, that all the organizations that are giving the money, mobilizing the people, have to adopt and preach LGBTQ+, you know, which means we are deflocking our young people completely of morals. And so that money plus immorality makes even the civil society totally diluted. And that actually is the question that you're asking. Are we losing it? And it is the money that is making us lose it.
So if the money was not there, but it's so for all that we see, what we're talking about now, the protests that we see, that there's a demand for good governance. Are you saying that even those who are demanding, as well as those who are being demanded of, we are in this money-soaked, atmosphere, and that's why we're doing the things that we do? Those who protest are doing it for money. Those who are not doing the governance right are behaving this way for what money they can get.
Some are, Mom. Some are. And those that are getting paid are mobilizing others to themselves. You know, that we have heard people in this country whose business is actually looking for that money, and for them to be agents of other leaders to go and bring more. Those people that are carrying the whips and rungus on the streets are actually paid. And you can see where they are paid.
For what? And this is the thing. For what gain? When we see, and this is one of the first things that you said, that there are goons who are being, let out onto the streets. There are those who are paying them. To what end? What is the purpose of having goons? You may disrupt people for an hour, but why do it?
Simply this, because we also said it earlier, that those that are in leadership now fear that they have done quite a lot of evil against the people, and they feel threatened. Who is it that can save us? Now, if we bring the police and the military, people will say that we are becoming dictators and so forth and so forth. So the best one is, let us employ some of their own groups to go and combat them. That's the interest.
But then, does that then negate the point you made earlier? Because you're looking at the organic Gen Z protests.
Yes.
And a lot of these young people are not going to the streets because they want money. They actually want to secure their future because they are seeing, from the finance bill protest that we saw last year to what we currently see today, minus the infiltration of the goons who are paid. So you have a population and a generation that is saying, look, we want accountability, we want justice. Where is our money going into? We want to have clear priorities in this country. We want better governance. We want good leadership. So the agitation then is not necessarily influenced by they want money. There is a group, and because it's the politicians' playbook to use goons, meaning that they will pay them money to go cause this disruption. Does that then mean that we are coming off, there's a generation coming off the handouts and the politics of tokenism?
True. You see, the generation that we have now, we are calling the GNC. In fact, I was talking to some of them yesterday, and I was reminding them that their fathers were denied a lot of knowledge for 30 years when we had President Moi's leadership. 30 years. They got involved in drama festivals that children are simply thinking about singing and drama in school. Hakuna kitu ingine. Then they meet once a year, in big festivals, and that is what they aimed for. For 30 years, there is nothing else they knew other than that. They did not bring up their children, in the way that you and I would think that the family should do. And so they were denied. Now, those that were denied are being blamed by their own children that they did not bring them up well. And so these children are saying, you failed us. We want to resuscitate our national life. Now, that's number one. Number two, we have got people that have infiltrated these young people, right? And those people that have infiltrated them are using money to confuse and to recruit from them. And you have seen a few people, some of them that we thought would be their leaders, are not there anymore. And number two is that when we think that they are going to be involved, then they start quarreling themselves. No, that one is not ours. Hiyo ni akina fulani. Wacha tu, so they have lost the aim unless they reinstate it.
But this question of money didn't just start with the Gen Z. During your time, like you rightly said, from YK92, the Jirongo, the 500 shilling, money was still being used.
That is when it started.
That's when it started.
1992.
So money was used then.
Yes, and they brought a lot of confusion. In fact, let me say this, sir, that if you follow the people that were in the youth for Kanu 92, who are in charge of the districts, they are no more. They died. Some of them through accidents, others committing suicide, that is what we were told. Others actually murdered. The question is this, what did that money do? What is it that it left us? It left us a lot of pain, and that pain has not been addressed, and we are accumulating it. Every time that we are doing things, something is happening that we will never address. We witnessed young people dying last year. Anybody talking about them? Now, today, we are talking about so many died this year at the world market and so forth. Is anybody addressing it? No. In fact, the leaders in this country need to appreciate one thing. It takes a minute to tip off society. And you can be able, because you have time now, to address it. In fact, it is not the people that should be able to create these programs. It is the government and the leader. The president waking up tomorrow morning and saying, look, we have cultural organizations and associations in this country, in every region. These cultural associations, nataka kusikia kutoka kwa wazee, wanataka tufanye nini. It will take only 7 days, and these things will be addressed.
But if you say the same wazés, these current generations are accusing of not taking care of the things they needed to take care of, if the president reaches out to these wazés, is there going to...
No. You got it wrong. There is my parent, for example.
Yes.
If I am 20 years, my parent maybe is about 45, right? Those are not the mzes I'm talking about. I am talking about the elders. People, if you go to care of the Luo, he will be able to give you the mzes who are sober and characters who look at society as just about...
But Njero, in context and in all fairness, all these wazés, what good have they done? Because we know most of them are actually bought. We know most of them are under some payrolls. What good are they?
I don't think that is correct. I don't think it is correct. You see, people who do must have an opportunity to do.
Okay.
They have to be given opportunity to do it. You cannot dismiss people until you have given them duties and responsibilities.
On how to go forward.
And this is what I'm saying, that the elders in this country cannot continue to be called elders until they have been given opportunity to address the issues that are disturbing this nation.
Let's take a break at this point. You'll stay on with us a little bit, Bwana, because we'll continue with this conversation. Now we step into what Saba means. We'll come back and we'll continue that, and we'll be joined by Professor Macharia Monene, though virtually, but we'll come back and continue with this conversation at this point while we...
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.